Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We have a really exciting event coming up. And we're going to start off with a video that we made for our campaign launch. So Bob, you can take it away.
My name is David Zuckerman, and I'm running to be your next Lieutenant Governor. I have served Vermonters for over 20 years because I love everything about this state, from the beauty of the Green Mountains to the passion and resilience of our people. But as we end this second year of the pandemic, Vermont is at a crossroads. The cost of living is rising and wages are not keeping up. Our rural economy is struggling and the climate crisis is wreaking havoc on our environment. Politicians say we need to get back to normal, but for many, pre-pandemic normal was a struggle every day. The time for bold action is now. I have led and collaborated with Vermonters on developing our rural economy, fighting the climate crisis, and supporting our small communities. I want to return to the office of Lieutenant Governor to build on the strengths of our rural communities by expanding broadband, investing in small-scale manufacturing, expanding access to land for historically marginalized communities, and increasing support for our farmers and loggers. I will elevate your voice to create and expand programs that address the needs of rural and urban families, from investing in childcare to expanding affordable rental and home ownership options. We need to act now to create a just transition to mitigate the effects of the climate crisis that threatens the livelihoods of people who work the land, outdoor guides, a rural hospitality industry, and everyday Vermonters. We can improve Vermonters' lives while ensuring a successful climate future for our children. We also need to continue to provide a strong and equitable response to the enduring COVID-19 pandemic. Stepping up to keep Vermonters as safe as possible during this crisis must be our first priority. This means health, food, shelter, and support for everyone in our community. This pandemic has been hard on everyone, but for those on the edge, it has been particularly challenging. I will focus on the communities most affected when addressing all of these issues. This includes BIPOC, LGBTQ, New American, low income, and other marginalized communities who often bear a disproportionate burden due to the failings of our system. As I have done in the past, as a representative, senator, and most recently as your Lieutenant Governor, I will work closely with you, everyday Vermonters, leaders, and organizations from around the state who have been fighting and organizing for decades around climate justice, economic justice, and social justice. In these uncertain times, by returning me to the office of Lieutenant Governor, you'll get experience and stability in our government's leadership, and you'll get a fighter who has successfully made positive change happen. We need our state government to work for Vermonters, to implement solutions that will help create better lives for everyday working people. I hope you'll join our campaign, because I know if we work together, we can create a state where all people are welcome, where our rural communities are vibrant and thriving, where people feel safe, and where no family has to struggle to have their basic needs met. Please sign up today to join my campaign. Together, we can create a brighter future for Vermont. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. My name is Lisa Gerlach. I'm the campaign manager for this race. And I'm really excited to be here because I think that we need bold leadership in Montpelier. We need people who understand the crises that working class people of Vermont are facing, from the disastrous effects of the climate change to a lack of access to life-saving medicines and healthcare. We need leaders who aren't afraid to show up to do the work, leaders like David, and I'm really honored to play a role in this campaign. And I'm really looking forward to working with each and every one of you who's here tonight to get David back into the Lieutenant Governor's office. We're launching the campaign here tonight officially, and I'm really excited for the amazing group of people that we have speaking tonight. We have people from all over the state who have dedicated so much of their time and energy already to doing the necessary work to make political change. We have teachers, union organizers, climate activists, and more. And you'll meet all of our incredible endorsers and speakers as the evening goes on. And we'll also have some time to answer your questions towards the end of the event. So if you do have questions for David, you can feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll get around to answering some of those later tonight. We're running a grassroots campaign, and what that means is that we aren't relying on corporate donations to fuel us. Our campaign is run on small dollar donations from people like you. So if you believe in what this campaign stands for, if you believe in creating a just Vermont where every single person, regardless of their circumstances, has a chance to thrive, you can head on over to our website, zuckerman4vt.com/donate. I'll put that link in the chat in just a moment. And pitch in what you can to become a founding donor for our campaign today. We really appreciate all of the people who have come out to support us already, and we'll really need support like this to make this campaign happen. And one more thing, I just wanted to introduce you to another member of our team, Sarah Scortino. Sarah's an amazing organizer who's going to be running our field and volunteer program, and I'll turn it over to her now so she can give you a little bit more information about volunteering. So welcome, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a UVM graduate and am so excited to be managing David's field program. As you all know, we are at such a pivotal time in history in Vermont and just all over with so much on the line. And from the pandemic to the climate crisis, we are truly in dire need of strong leadership informed by experience and a genuine desire to do good. And you all know that this campaign is an important one. And although David has been our lieutenant governor before, the race will not be a shoo-in. So we really do need all hands on deck. And I want to emphasize that there's no task too small, whether you are interested in phone banking, canvassing, distributing literature, postering, stuffing envelopes, writing postcards, taking, storing, or distributing lawn signs, data input or management, text banking, attending parades and events, or even just sharing your support for Dave on social media or Front Porch Forum. Any amount really does go quite a long way. So yeah, we're also looking for folks more immediately this town meeting day on Tuesday to canvass at the polls. So be sure to reach out if you're available. Please sign up to support Dave with your time at the link I'm about to put in the chat or by emailing me. And just remember that whatever your capacity, your involvement is really essential to the success of this campaign. Thanks.
So I want to thank everyone for coming. Many of you know me, some might not. I'm David Zuckerman. I am your former lieutenant governor. I also served in the House and the Senate for 18 years. I'm going to introduce a number of folks who I've met and worked with over the years from all across the state. As you know, I've been in public service for a long time. Some of these folks I know through my private life as well. And I hope through these voices, you're going to learn a little bit more about me, but also the range of issues that are important to me. Think of all of us as we look forward to building a new, better normal for Vermonters while we tackle the big issues of the day. Before I do, I want to offer a huge thank you to my prior campaign manager and my sidekick, queen of all things, Meg Polite. Many of you knew her from or know her from the prior campaigns. She paid her dues 1,000 times over in managing my 3 statewide races, as well as my campaigns for state senate and many other aspects of support for the many causes that so many of us have devoted our time to. She's excited to be free of the intense schedule of running such a campaign. Additionally, I am super excited to welcome Lisa on board as my campaign manager in this cycle. She cut her teeth working on Bernie's 2 campaigns for president, as well as campaigns in Maryland, and most recently working on House races here in Vermont in the 2020 cycle. I'm really excited for you all to get to know her. Sarah helped the team and help us all navigate the nuances through every corner of the state. So to start with, I'm really pleased to welcome a longtime friend, Pete Sutherland. He and I met through my spouse in the contra dance world. He is known across Vermont and across the country for his work in folk music and contra dance, teaching kids music, and through music, teaching thinking skills and about what's important in life beyond what is typically talked about. He's known for community building with his kind spirit and big heart, and I'm incredibly honored that he's taken the time to join us to start this off. So please welcome Pete Sutherland.
It's really great to be here with everybody working so hard to put this man back in the lieutenant governor's office. And as David says, I am a musician by trade, and it was a great pleasure to have an opportunity to welcome several area farmers in to help some first and second graders find out more about farming, past, present, and hopefully future. And one of them, of course, was our friend and yours, David Zuckerman. So I'm going to sing a little bit of this song, which he had a hand in as well. I am a farmer raising Holsteins in this big barn of mine, patiently in line. Morning and evening, I've watched their sweet milk run twice a day for years and years, but now my milking's done. And the worst thing, rainstorms on all my new cut hay. But the best thing is newborn calves knowing they're okay. And this land, it was farmland when I came, with a long, long history, many farmers' names. And someday, when I have had my turn, I hope this land will still be farmland. I am a farmer growing veggies, those favorite foods of mine. I eat them all the time, fresh, green, and tender, and right out of the ground. I planted thin and mulched them all, while sun and rain come down. And the worst thing, wind that blows a new greenhouse away. But the best thing, picking berries with my kids on a summer's day. And this land, it was farmland when I came, with a long, long history, many farmers' names. And someday, when I have had my turn, I hope this land will still be farmland. I am a farmer, and I'll tell you that my hours, they are long. I've just gotta be strong. You'll never learn it all, no matter how you try. It's kinda like the weather changing right before my eyes. It's a hard life, but a good one, as far as I can see. I didn't really choose it, I reckon it chose me. And this land, it was farmland when I came, with a long, long history, and many farmers' names. And someday, when I've had my turn, I hope this land will still be farmland. Yes, I hope this land will still be farmland. Go, David.
Thank you, Pete. I really appreciate that. I hope that song gives everyone a little sense of both what farmers go through, but I think it's also related to the work we're going to do, which is that the work is never done. We keep learning as we go. There are things we do when we're fighting for these issues that work, and sometimes we make mistakes along the way. Sometimes curveballs are thrown at us, but we just got to keep putting our heads down, thinking about ways to improve, do the job better. And I think that's something that most people on this call who have helped their neighbors or fought for causes have learned along the way. But I really enjoyed speaking with those kids. And they wrote that song out of the various conversations we all had with them. And I was just incredibly honored when Pete told me that some of my words were included. But we have a lot of work to do, and we're going to do it together. As my dad used to say, many hands make light work. The next person I have the honor to introduce is Mary Collins. She and I met through conversations about our state college system and the chronic underfunding that's occurred at the state level. We discussed the importance of what the state colleges represent for all of us as the opportunity they create for everyday Vermonters to lift themselves up. Through that organizing, I got to know Mary better and really came to understand her connection and her roots in the state, as well as her keen and kind ability to work with a wide range of folks on issues well beyond the state college system. Her deep commitment to this state and the web that connects all of us, from Indigenous to multi-generational Vermonters, to first-generation folks like me, to new Americans, she is welcoming and thoughtful. And that's an energy I hope we put out throughout this whole campaign. So I'm pleased to introduce Mary Collins. Welcome.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, David, Lisa, Sarah, and everyone on your team for inviting me to support David's run for Lieutenant Governor for the state of Vermont. I couldn't be more pleased to do so. My name is Mary Collins. I grew up in Burlington, now live in Elmore, and have lived in Vermont my entire life. As a sixth-generation Vermonter, I'm fully aware that what we decide today affects our future generations, including my son and his family. David Zuckerman knows this too, and it informs his leadership decisions. As he said, I came to know David through my work on behalf of our state colleges. When the colleges were threatened with closure, I and my sister were among a group of faculty, staff, students, and alumni who spoke out on the college's behalf. These are important Vermont assets that affect the quality of life and resources in our rural communities, as well as the future of thousands of students, faculty, staff, and alumni like myself. David championed our efforts. He understood the need to fund and sustain the colleges and how losing them would be devastating to current and potential students, many first generation like myself, but also to the vitality of the communities where they're located. David also welcomed my friend and guest, Alex Whiteplume, the former president of tribal government on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, to the Vermont State House when Alex was visiting Vermont in 2018. And our Lieutenant Governor again graciously hosted my friend Cleophas Mukeba, a Vermonter by way of the Republic of the Congo, who along with his family spent many years as a refugee. David has always championed a diversity of cultures, voices, and points of view to help foster a more inclusive government. I've never felt unwelcome or unimportant in his company. David Zuckerman has an exemplary record of service to the state of Vermont while also maintaining a very active farm with his family, as we all know. And since 1997, he's supported our rural economy through a keen understanding of agricultural issues, an active approach to mitigating climate change, and an understanding that we also need livable wages, good jobs, affordable housing, and health care. David has been a champion of marriage equality, death with dignity, GMO labeling, and more. He knows that our voices inform his voice. He listens, he learns, and he acts with integrity that is inclusive of everyone's needs. David's ideas are not radical. They're based in sensible policies and legislation that benefit everyone. Must we arrive at consensus when making big decisions? Yes, absolutely. But we cannot lose our individual identities and points of view along the way. We need someone in the Lieutenant Governor's office who knows how to navigate with grace. That is David Zuckerman. I've been impressed by his accessibility and sincerity. Mostly, however, I'm impressed by his humility. Because Vermont is a special place where all of us can have a seat at the table, old and young, conservative and progressive, urban and rural. David can sit and talk and listen with anyone, something that is almost lost in today's political landscape. He does not see the world in a binary way. As we watch support for our democracy come to the brink, we need someone like David who can welcome all, even when in strong disagreement with some. We are not acquisitions to him. We are partners in a shared goal. He's well respected across party lines. He's been keenly devoted to public service for over 25 years, and not for the sake of a political career. It just so happens that public service is the best arena for someone of David Zuckerman's character, talent, and experience. And every Vermonter is the beneficiary of that legacy. I will again vote for David Zuckerman as Vermont's next Lieutenant Governor, and I hope you will too. Please spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Wow, I really appreciate that. It encompassed a lot of different things. And I just want to remind or point out that so many of those issues that Mary highlighted I may have been a champion at the elected level in whatever office I happened to be at the time. But those issues pass and happen because of community effort and organizing. And the next person I'm going to introduce is someone who's been an organizer and a union leader for a long time. Dwight Brown has known long before I have that the labor movement and the civil rights movements go hand in hand. The economic system we find ourselves in has a lot of upsides, but it also pits people against each other when the resources are scarce. And I really respect folks like Dwight and others here today who connect the dots of our various struggles, whether it be economic divides, social and racial divides, or the reality that how we treat our planet impacts all of us, regardless of our personal situation. We also know that people cannot do as much for others or the planet if they're struggling to take care of their own needs. And that's why labor leaders such as Dwight are critical in this movement. We know that poor working conditions or low pay or lack of health care or lack of affordable housing are all part of the everyday struggle for so many of our neighbors. I'm deeply honored to have Dwight here to say a few words. Thank you, Dwight.
Thank you, David. I'm so excited to be here, and the excitement just went over me when I heard that you were running for lieutenant governor again. And I love the vast and most talented panel that you have talking today, because I really believe that everything that's going on in Vermont is connected. I'm a labor leader, but I understand, and I know David understands, that all these things are connected. We can't have social justice without economic justice. We can't have economic justice without environmental justice. And David has always understood that. And, I'm a labor leader and I support David, and I always have, and he's the kind of leader we need in politics right now, especially in the State House. He brings a vast amount of experience and knowing how the State House runs, and we need that. But most importantly, David, he has an open ear and an open mind for people who even disagree with him. And I understand that politics is a game of people in from all walks of society and all levels of society. David is just down to earth. That's what always has just like connected me to him. And he understands how labor unions work, and how some of the things that we're facing as a labor union, like passing of card check elections, so more people can join collective bargaining units if they want to, and how that connects with green jobs, and how that connects with us fighting climate change and housing and affordability. All those things are connected. And the really, really cool thing about it is everyone here is a part of that. Everyone here is connected in some way, because we're all Vermonters. We all want the same thing. But most importantly, in the era of the big lie, David is a truth teller. David is a truth teller, and that's what we need in the State House. I'm glad you're running, brother. I was so excited when I heard you were running. I think my wife was like, "What's going on with you?" And I'm like, David's coming back. And so I'm glad to be here. From a labor standpoint, I really, really hope that David can provide some leadership in getting some bills passed, especially card check elections. But our state is having a lot of problems. Our colleges were being attacked, and education is so unaffordable for most of our students, and our young people are leaving, our workforce is aging. And I think David has some great ideas to attack those issues and to build a coalition around those issues. And I'm glad he's coming back. He has my vote. I hope you will vote for him. I'm inviting him to our next executive board session, so we can talk about an endorsement. We're not there yet, but I have a great feeling about it, because labor unions support David, because when labor unions need David, he suits up and he shows up to help us. And so we're going to suit up, we're going to show up, and we're going to help David Zuckerman be lieutenant governor of the great state of Vermont. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, Dwight. I really appreciate that. And it reminds me of the various different times that I've gone out to walk on the picket lines, whether it was IBEW and CWA folks at Verizon, or teachers in Colchester and Richmond and Burlington, and nurses up at Fletcher Allen and UVM Medical Center, working to use their collective voice to fight for their rights and fight for their benefits and working conditions to benefit all of us. So Dwight, thank you so much for those words, and I look forward to attending your meeting and working with you all, hopefully to get the endorsement of the AFL-CIO. My next guest is Christine Hallquist. I got to know Christine a lot better a few years ago when she and I were both running for statewide office. I'd known her peripherally through her leadership in the utility world, but it was on the campaign trail that I watched her learn the tough ropes of getting out there and putting yourself in front of folks to be inspected, critiqued, rejected, and accepted. And she was being judged through far more lenses than I was. And I watched her work with grace and confidence. And I saw her respect for others who sometimes, and more than sometimes, did not respect her. And she offered ideas that generated broad discussion. And now she's using her utility knowledge to finally get Vermont connected all across the state. That connectivity will propel Vermont to the front of the pack yet again. It's going to be important for us to plan for the positive as well as the likely negative consequences of that expansion. Certainly, we'll have the ability to connect in through our schools, and kids will be able to connect in ways that they hadn't been these last couple of years. But with better broadband, we'll have also greater housing pressures as more people move here. It's exciting that businesses will be able to locate in rural areas, but we also need to plan for the changes that will come. I know Christine is well aware of this, as she too is someone who thinks well outside of the specific lane that she may be working in. And I'm very pleased to introduce Christine Hallquist. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, David, and I'm so glad you're running. I'm a proud now transgender woman living in Wolcott right now, and I must say that I benefited tremendously from David's support during my work. But David provides a really important voice to the Vermont political conversation. He's got really a strong representative for those people who've not been represented in the past. And he's become a source of inspiration power for those who've been historically excluded from the greater community. And I personally have benefited from advocacy that David has been doing, and he's been an inspiration for me. And I'll even talk about something as basic as going to the bathroom. You know, David was a supporter of the single stall gender neutral bathroom bill, which I can say from the transgender community, it was a great relief to us. Excuse the pun. But at the same time, it benefited the greater community. You know, when I go into other states and I see people standing, of certain genders standing outside single stall bathrooms, I chuckle because it's such a simple solution that provides great relief for all of us. And I'm riding on the shoulders of people like David who have fought for justice in the past. In 2018, I became the first major party gubernatorial transgender candidate in the nation, and that was possible because of the work like David and those before him. And that success gives me a voice so that I can advocate for others. And continuously making progress, generation after generation, to our aspiration of equal justice and opportunity is all of our collective responsibility. And today, as David said, my job is to get every Vermont address connected to fiber optic internet. And we're going to do it because we have enough funds to do it at this point right now. When the project's completed, Vermont will move from being 25th in the nation, in a nation that's 10th in the world in terms of connectivity, to being number one in the world in terms of connectivity. So building that advanced network it's about providing those who are currently living on the wrong side of the digital divide the opportunity for growth, education, and advancement. But if we build this network and we only provide additional ways for the wealthy to live here, then we've failed. We must have David's advocacy to make sure we transform everyone's lives in a positive way and not just the wealthy. So Vermont's facing a number of challenges, including environmental, social equality, and lack of diversity. And David will provide advocacy for solving these problems in a way that benefits those who are most impacted by those issues. I have a long history in Vermont. I like to tell people that I'm older than dirt. So I've been working on social and climate change a long time. In that work, David and my paths have crossed many times. And Dave's been consistent in his support for marginalized populations, the environment, justice, and equality. And David's door is open and accessible to everyone in Vermont. And under David's past leadership, the office of Lieutenant Governor played an active role in moving Vermont forward. And David, I look forward to getting back there and doing that again.
Thank you, Christine. I appreciate that, and certainly appreciate your words. And as you just mentioned, your donations, folks volunteering all over the state. I know my team has been putting links into the chat. So if you are so moved or inclined, please feel free to click on those to either volunteer or donate. It's going to be a team effort. Elections like this are not won just by one person by any means. And I think you all know that. I know that, and I've thought that, and have thankfully had all of your help many, many times before. Christine talked about the environment and near the end of her remarks. And as I go through these introductions and I think about each of the folks who are speaking today and are willing to be public and supporting me in this effort to be our Lieutenant Governor again, not to diminish anybody else, but I'm most excited about this next speaker, Gabe Groveman. The reason I'm excited is because young people like Gabe and my daughter and others could easily say, forget it. Y'all messed everything up. There's no hope. I'm going to go bury myself in distraction. But there's a realization that many have, and that is that there are two choices, escapism or action. And Gabe is one of thousands of young people across this state who are saying inaction is not an option. And I want to add, additionally, it's a completely unfair. I often hear older folks say, well, the young kids are going to save the day. It's completely unfair for those of us that are older, both those of us that have been activists for decades, as well as those who are new to the issues or the cause, to say the youth will fix it. It was our inability to successfully address these issues, particularly the climate, that has us where we are today. And it is all of our responsibility to make the adjustments, to recalibrate our systems, so that we can make this planet fully livable for Gabe, my daughter, and people and animals and plants all around the world. I want to thank Gabe for reminding me of myself years ago, and I look forward to seeing where he ends up as the years unfold. Gabe, thank you for joining us and speaking to the overarching issue of our time. Gabe Groveman.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Gabe Groveman. I'm a senior at Montpelier High School and have been involved with youth advocacy work in the state for the past 4 years or so, with a special focus on climate justice. I'm honored to be able to speak today, and I'm extremely excited to see David Zuckerman running for Lieutenant Governor, because we need someone in the State House who we can trust to listen to and uplift the voices of young people, someone who will fight for my generation's future by supporting strong climate action. I firmly believe that David Zuckerman will do this. Before the pandemic, youth activism in the state was at a high point, with frequent actions, rallies, and press conferences happening.
We might have lost Gabe, which is such a shame. I really wish we'd had a chance to hear from Gabe. You know, we are at a really critical time with our climate and our environment. Rachel, my spouse, and I, these last few days, even these last couple of months, have experienced howling winds here at the farm with a much greater frequency than we remember. And I don't know if other folks just feel it in your bones that the climate is talking to us. And it is telling us that we have really messed up. And we have to take this issue, bring it to the forefront. And like I said earlier, take the individual steps, but also really look at our policies around energy, transportation, heating, and find a way to allow us the quality of life we want to have without continuing to erode the quality of life for our children and our future. We feel it on the farm, and I know that young people feel it every day. There's a lot of anxiety, and we need to be supporting our youth who are speaking out for us and for our planet every step of the way. So thank you, Gabe. I'm really sorry that some of that cut out. Our next speaker is on the front lines of our
Looks like
future every
Gabe's
day.
back, actually.
Oh.
Sorry.
Gabe, let's give it a try. Can we see if you can remake sort of the last 2/3 of your remarks by any chance?
Yeah, sorry about that.
It happens.
Issues.
Go for it.
But yeah, I mean, I was, I think, talking about how by giving us even more of a platform and being truly interested in what we had to say, he elevated our legitimacy and power within the State House at a time where we could use all the help we could get. David remained an ally throughout that session, where our efforts culminated in the passage of historic climate policy like the Global Warming Solutions Act, and has continued to prove that he cares about the climate and what the youth have to say. If Vermont is going to continue to adopt bold and equitable solutions to the climate crisis, then we're going to need to have allies within the highest offices of our state. And I can think of no other candidate who has demonstrated their commitment to this issue in the past in the way that David Zuckerman has. In the coming years, I would love to see a Vermont in which addressing the climate crisis is prioritized and youth voices are heard, because what we've done so far is just not enough. Our state still has the opportunity to set a nationwide example of what creating a sustainable future means in practice. We need legislation that helps, not hurts, already disenfranchised communities like the Environmental Justice Bill, and solutions that promote and support green new jobs. I and the rest of Vermont youth demand to be able to live in a future that we can survive in and a state that we can continue to be proud of by putting people over profit. I look forward to seeing the strides Vermont takes towards a greener future, and with the support of David Zuckerman as Lieutenant Governor.
Well, I'm glad we got Gabe back. Thank you for those words, Gabe. While you were gone, I was speaking to the deep way that the climate is speaking to us with the winds, with the temperature swings. I think Wednesday, the high is supposed to be something like 52 degrees, and that night it's supposed to get down almost to the single digits. I'll throw in a plug. Wednesday, 350.org has a rally at the State House at noon. I plan to be there. If anybody wants to volunteer, come on out and support 350.org and the other organizations on climate issues. That was supposed to be on Friday. It got bumped because of the weather. So going to continue on with some of the issues around youth, but through the lens of a teacher. And our next speaker is on the front lines of our future every day. As a teacher, we entrust Kate McCann and thousands of others to expand the tools our youth will use to be great citizens and to make the change for our future in their neighborhoods, in their communities, through their work, through their families. Teaching is so much more than helping our youth get good scores on tests. Not a big fan of No Child Left Behind and all the teaching to the test requirements that now exist. But teachers do so much more than teaching the basic information. There are role models. They spend more time with our kids than many of us do. They're there to counsel as well as teach, to mentor as well as inspire. And I think back to my youth and the impact so many teachers had on my life, from being a surrogate father after my father died to helping me, excuse me, can somebody mute maybe? Teachers were there for me. I mentioned how one of my teachers really was a surrogate in my father's place after he died. They helped me push farther than I thought I could when I didn't think I could get it right. Kate has been recognized as one of those teachers, as Teacher of the Year in 2017 for her incredible teaching and dedication to our kids and our future. I've been a guest in her class, and I've seen the spirit that she brings to her work every day, and also the summer programs she's led and worked. And in this day and age, we're asking so much of our teachers. In fact, I'd argue we ask too much of our teachers and we give them too little support. And to think, I've added on to her burdens by asking her to be here tonight. So I'm incredibly grateful and want to thank her for adding this to her busy schedule. So Kate, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Kate McCann, 2017 Vermont Teacher of the Year and a 2018 Albert Einstein Distinguished Educators Fellow. I'm here tonight to publicly support David in his race for Vermont Lieutenant Governor. During my 11-month appointment as a fellow on Capitol Hill in DC, I worked for then Representative Marcia Fudge, now Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. I fielded calls for her constituents in the greater Cleveland area. I took meetings with constituents, lobbyists, nonprofits, and large corporations like the Cleveland Clinic. And I prepared the Congresswoman for hearings pertaining to education and labor. What I learned from her about politics is that you work for your constituents. You have to be willing to show up for people, to not make empty promises, to always be over-prepared, and to stick to your convictions. David has shown up for teaching and learning on numerous occasions. As Teacher of the Year, I was encouraged by the Council of Chief State School Officers to reach out to local leaders and invite them into my classroom. I extended the invite to many of the Vermont's leaders, including Governor Scott and then Lieutenant Governor Zuckerman. Governor Scott's office didn't respond to the invite. David came to my classroom. He participated in the lessons. He asked and answered questions from my students. He shared in the learning experiences. To some, this might not sound like much. To me, to my students, to my student teacher from UVM, to my school, it was a very big deal. In 2017, I directed the first statewide math fair in Vermont, hosted at UVM. I asked David if he might join us for the awards portion of the program and say a few words to the students. As luck would have it, David had his farmer hat on that morning at a Burlington farmers market and was able to put on his political hat and speak with the K-12 students participating in the fair. Again, it may not seem like much of a big deal, but it meant the world to me, and it meant so much to the students and to their family members who were there supporting their math fair projects. It's no secret that David is a strong supporter of unions and the hardworking Vermonters who make up those unions. Vermont NEA hosts an event to celebrate accomplished teaching each year, and when we've invited David to attend and speak, he continues to follow through and show up for teachers. David Zuckerman has the record, experience, and vision to move Vermont forward. His values match our values. He's a farmer, a husband, and a father. He supports raising the minimum wage to ensure hardworking families have safe and affordable housing and ample, nourishing food on their tables. David supports a future in which hardworking Vermonters, unions, and small businesses provide renewable and sustainable energy sources as we keep our promises to reduce emissions and reliance on fossil fuels. David supports and respects teachers for their vital services they provide. At every opportunity, he elevates teachers' voice and seeks collaborative solutions to issues that impede teaching and learning. David recognizes that our public schools are at the heart of our communities. I share his vision for redefining schools of all sizes to become a resource to ensure children and families have easy access to the services and support that they need. David Zuckerman for Vermont's Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, Kate. I really appreciate it. And I knew I attended a lot of things, but thank you for the reminder on some of the ones that, in the clutter of it all, I hadn't always remembered. So thank you. And it's true, I often run from farmers market as it wraps up to events around the state. And I really, really enjoy that one. I think was up at UVM, heading up to students and talk with students all across the state about how our democracy works, about farming, about their topic of the day, and being able to answer questions from young people who are so much more engaged than many people think, and so much more interested in what's happening and what can be done to improve their future. And you've invited me many times. It's been a pleasure to be at those events. And thank you for being an inspiration as well. Because like I said, teachers, you know, I can't imagine anybody who doesn't have some teacher in their history that turned on a light switch for them and propelled them into their future and their success by being that inspiration for them. One of the last person I'm going to have join us is another sage mentor for me and for many others. We're lucky to have many deeply thoughtful people in this state, and Roger is one of those folks. He has wisdom deep in his soul. Folks like him take the time to really delve into the complexity of issues, don't always react quickly, but really think about the different perspectives of what's going on. And Roger's one of those people. He's someone who's not only working in the moment, but he looks deep into our past to take lessons from others that have learned and then apply them to the current situation and create solutions for the future. On numerous occasions, I have heard Roger talk about reading through the notes of prior secretaries of agriculture as he was reflecting on the current state of ag in Vermont. As a first-generation farmer myself, I tip my hat to Roger and his legacy on agriculture in Vermont. He represents for me the many who have toiled to help build the fabric of our state. The community spirit where people look out for each other in the immediate moment, whether friend or not. I just read a post online about a tragic barn fire in St. Albans and the dozens of farmers from across the state who came to take the 800 cows into their herds to help keep them safe and healthy while the farmer rebuilds for the future. People in the community do that, whether they have the time or not, they make the time. People across Vermont have done this through the pandemic as well. We helped our neighbors, and it's in our spirit. And Roger is that spirit. And I'm so pleased that he is willing to support this campaign and speak here tonight. Welcome, Roger Alvey.
Thank you, David. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here supporting you tonight. I had the real pleasure and honor of working with David when he was chair of the Vermont House Ag Committee, and I was Secretary of Agriculture. And one of the things that I always have admired about David, that when you're dealing with these issues, it's not about politics. It's about dealing with the issues and trying to arrive at a solution that is best for the people of the state of Vermont. And that was always the case with David, whether it was energy or water quality or the future of hemp production in the state or other issues related to the viability of Vermont. He and his wife are farmers. Their hands are in the soil daily. They talk to consumers. They know the meaning of what it means to be hungry. When they talk to consumers of food security, they know the meaning of being part of the community in terms of healthcare and the need for healthcare and access to healthcare, the access to jobs, the access to education that's always been so key, as Mary said, to Vermont and our Vermont youth. All the issues that are really facing us today, and more particularly climate change. And those kind of issues are going to require bold leadership. My trying to be a student of history of Vermont and ag history is that for change to take place, we need leaders who are able to bring people together, able to talk, able to listen, able to bring about change. And David has the experience. He's been in the House, he's been in the Senate, he's on the land, he's in the community, he's among us, and he knows how to build coalitions. So David, it really is an honor to be here tonight and to be with you and the rest of the people saying we need you. So thank you.
Thank you, Roger. And I really do appreciate your joining us. And I'm sorry the connection wasn't great, so we couldn't watch you as much while we also heard your words. But it really, farming is in my soul. As the song started at the beginning, talking about how it chose me. And I know for you and many others in Vermont, farming is in your blood, and farming is such a connection from soil to people to vibrancy. And I sometimes think about some of my share members and my farm who were infants when I first met them 20 years ago, and now they're off to college, and how literally some real percentage of their body is food that came from our farm, Rachel's and my farm, and the work that my crew and I have done. And I know a lot of farmers have a sense of I don't know what the word is for feeding people, just helping us all exist through our work. So that fabric is key, and it's one of the reasons I'm so focused on our rural economy and really making sure we continue to have that connection. So I'm going to offer a few words, and then we'll get into our Q&A. And I just want to say that I expected to be moved some by the words that my friends have said tonight, but it's moved me deeper than I had even expected. And I have always tried to do this work in a way that impacts people's lives for the better. And to hear that that's the case from friends from around the state who have given examples that some I may have known about through my work, and others where they've mentioned others that were impacted that I didn't even know, is incredibly profound. And it's an incredible honor to have served Vermonters for many years. And I hope to have the honor, and I want all of your help to be able to have that opportunity to serve Vermont again after this coming election as your lieutenant governor. This group of people that just spoke is really a small sample of the great folks who are making Vermonters' lives better, one moment at a time. So many of you here tonight are also part of that reality. You're joining us, you're not getting a chance to speak tonight, but I know that how you treat others, the way that you give time in your communities, this is all of what makes Vermont so special. And for those of you who are here at the beginning, when you saw the launch video, you can check it out on my website, Zuckerman4vt.com. But in that video, I really meant it when I talked about how much I love the state and our people. And it's folks that spoke tonight that are a prime example of why I love our people in this state. Deeply thoughtful, deeply caring, and people putting their time and energy into the betterment for all of us. But right now, you know, when I hear people ask each day, you know, how are you? Or how you doing? I know I pause, and I imagine many of you pause in a way that we didn't used to. We used to just quickly answer, oh, I'm great, you know, I'm fine, or, you know, whatnot. But now we kind of have to think in this huge moment of uncertainty. The pandemic has certainly changed our ability to just say, oh, I'm fine, things are good. Or, and hopefully we're near the end of this pandemic, but we still have to keep vigilant and be thoughtful about what we do around people to make sure we don't transmit it further. But we also have a democracy that's tattered. It's being pulled apart. We have a planet that's telling us each day, and with the winds and the storms, that we have to do something for our future. So we can't just answer, I'm fine. Many of us are lucky that despite these global issues, we can answer, relatively speaking, I'm doing well. We have outdoor space where we can go out for a walk with a friend. Many of us, if not all here tonight, have security in knowing where our next meal is coming from, or that we have a roof over our heads. But this is not the case for thousands of people around the state. Many of our neighbors are unable to contemplate these global issues because they're still struggling to put food on the table. They're nervous about paying their rent or how they'll make their next car payment. It's a luxury and a critical necessity that we think globally, but we have to make sure our neighbors can think about tomorrow as well. And I know everyone here knows this. That's why you're here, because you care and you know that the issues are bigger than any one of us can solve. While we each work to make each other's lives and others' lives better each day, we also know that there are systemic issues that we need to tackle together. We need policies and resources that shift the dynamics that hold so many people down. We must build more affordable housing. We must implement a universal healthcare system. We can and must make the changes we can for our energy future. But what we can do is limited if we don't take collective action to change where our power comes from or how we use it. We can each work to tackle our own implicit biases on a day-to-day basis, but we also have to make changes to the system so we stop perpetrating unequal treatment of individuals based on nothing that they have control over: their race, mental health, socio or economic status, or their gender identity, things they were born into. The pandemic has exacerbated so many issues in our system, and we do not have time to waste on fixing them. People are exhausted. Our frontline workers, nurses, teachers, food service workers, and more deserve respect and protection as much as any other worker in the state. Our small business owners deserve universal health care for their employees, so we're not unfairly competing with larger businesses for the limited pool of workers. We need to invest in our rural communities and our infrastructure by fixing our roads and expanding broadband, yes. But we also need to invest in our human infrastructure, our education system, human services, childcare, elder care. We need to ensure that healthcare is not a privilege that only some can afford. We must get to a universal system. In life, I've been lucky enough to have been given a leg up, to be given opportunities to help beyond the immediate community and day-to-day life of my neighbors. You all have helped me to be a public servant, to help elevate these kinds of issues. But I want to make something clear. Those of us in public office only have as much ability to make progress as you make possible. It is through community organizing, labor organizing, people organizing, and coming together that we have the voice to impact the system. As we organize together in solidarity, we'll be able to change the system faster. Right now, we're in a scary moment. It's a scary moment for our democracy because nationally there are those that are using their money and influence to amplify misinformation and create division. It is so important that we stop looking at these issues through the binary lens of the other side or them versus us. The reality is that many who are expressing their anger on social issues or politics, they're on the same side as 99% of us with respect to the fears for our future, for their children, for their economic stability, and for their health. The fear of not being able to provide food, shelter, health, and happiness for our families and ourselves. The problems we face have been decades in the making, but we have limited time to show that we are really starting to solve them. We do not have time to kick the can down the road any further. As a public office holder in the past, and in the future, I'm not one to say, let's wait on that. Its time will come. We need to act now. You know that. I've worked with so many of you, like the folks before me today, to push the political system farther than it wanted to go. Our work together has made Vermont a better place. We've led the nation on many issues. We need to do that again. But we have more to do and less time to do it. I plan as your Lieutenant Governor to continue that work, not only to make sure we reinvigorate faith in our system of democracy, but also to broaden and welcome those voices that have been pushed aside. Those that are angry or fearful need to be included. Those who have been left out of the equation need to be included. We need to bring everyone in and rebuild our sense of community. We need to dig into the wisdom of our elders and the spirit and ideas of our youth. We need to bridge the divides of them versus us, and I'm prepared to lead in this effort. In this campaign, I've already been asked, who are your opponents? And I work to reframe it as we're all running to be public servants. I don't view them as opponents. It's not a sports game or a war. We may have different ideas or styles or breadth or perspective, but we're all putting ourselves out there to serve. And I'm hopeful that we can reframe these conversations. And I'm excited to bring my experience in doing that, my passion for these issues, and my dedication to raising your voices back up into the system through my role in the office of Lieutenant Governor. I really appreciate your support, and I'm asking you for the huge favor of your time, a small piece of your treasure, and most importantly, your spirit and commitment to helping our neighbors. We need to win this election and fight for our future. Thank you. I really appreciate you being here tonight.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. And thank you so much again to all of the speakers who came to this event. We just had such a powerhouse of people who are doing important work around the state. And one thing is this campaign isn't all about David, it's about the work that he can do to help uplift people like our speakers in the work that they're doing. So with that being said, we're opening it up to questions now. I've seen a couple in the chat. If anybody else has questions, now's the time to post it in the chat. But I'm going to start with one that I saw Wolfgang Schneider post. Speaking of energy, food is the most important form of energy that humans need. However, currently it takes about 10 calories of fossil fuel to produce and deliver 1 calorie to our table. How do you see this problem resolved as we have to reduce our fossil fuel usage?
Well, thank you. That's a great question, and it's something that I talked about a couple of years ago in my last campaign, which was that during this moment when we have a tremendous amount of federal funds, I would really like us to look at whether or not there could be community food storage facilities. You know, I'll tell a brief story, which is that when the pandemic started back in 2 years ago, essentially, we had a fair amount of food in storage still. We had about 25,000 pounds of food in storage on the farm, and it went very, very quickly. And it made me think about our food system and how a farm like mine, one of the mediumly larger vegetable farms in the state, truly only had about 1 day worth of food for all the citizens of Chittenden County at the peak of our storage in early November. We do not nearly have enough food capacity, storage capacity in Vermont to really allow many of the small produce farms and meat farms to grow more. To invest in storage on farms is not a cheap investment. We used to have the apple co-ops where they would bring all their apples to central places. And so I think that if we had some resources in some communities to expand storage, we could actually allow a lot of those small 2 and 3 and 5 acre farms to double their growth and not have to make the investment in on-farm storage. This is important not only from a climate perspective, but from a resilience perspective. We all remember when the shelves were getting pretty empty, and even today we're having some supply issues on some stores, on some shelves. So this is critically important from a community building perspective, from an environmental transportation of food perspective, as was mentioned in the question, and from a resilience question with respect to our ability to feed ourselves. So I appreciate the question, and we really need to make that investment to rebuild our rural economy. Thank you.
Awesome. The next question comes from Kelt Wilska. In your office of Lieutenant Governor, what can you do to elevate policies in the legislature?
I appreciate that question. It was interesting. When I first became Lieutenant Governor 5 years ago, I put out a newsletter encouraging folks to reach out to their representatives and senators and I put that newsletter out all across the state to my email network on the issues that people cared about. And I had 3 or 4 different senators come up to me and say, hey, why did you ask people to call me? It was kind of fascinating. Most of them were pleased with it, but some of them were displeased. And so the reason I tell that story is that one of the ways to influence policy is to help you with the information of how to reach your representatives and senators or the issues that are on the table in the moment, just as many advocacy groups do, but with a breadth of issues that any one particular advocacy venue doesn't always offer you. And when you reach out to your reps and senators, and I do this encouragement when I talk to school groups, I do this encouragement when I talk to labor halls, I do this encouragement when I talk to Rotaries, your voices mean a lot when you call with an individual letter or phone call. And my voice is amplified when they know that you are responding to my communication and our trust with each other, that when I say, hey, this issue's up, we need those calls, you call, they know that I've helped request that. And that gives some clout within the building. On the other hand, I think it's really important to recognize that the legislators don't always want to have the lieutenant governor telling them what to do, but they do want to listen to you. And so as lieutenant governor, it's the grassroots organizing that really elevates my strength in the building And it's also an opportunity in my office to bring people in from different perspectives on an issue, to give them a space and maybe help facilitate the meeting to come to a result so that the legislation can move forward. So there's a number of different ways, but they're all a little bit softer touch than the podium thumping, bully pulpit methodology that some people expect.
Okay, next question from Matthew LaFleur. How can BIPOC communities and citizens trust the government since they've not been involved or invited to the table?
There's no doubt. I think that's legitimate suspicion. Not only have folks not been invited to the table, but there's been systemic mistreatment and different treatment over many, many decades and centuries even. And we have to rebuild that trust. We need to bring people in, elevate voices. I've worked to try to do that. I think as Mary spoke about, some different people visited from Indigenous communities around the country, but also from within the communities here in Vermont to the office. We elevated Abenaki folk within the office with some of the artwork on our walls to make sure people would recognize that the land we're on, the land that I farm, is not really owned by all of us. It was actually here before we were here, and we didn't take it in a lawful manner. And so having those kinds of conversations and elevating voices, and then fundamentally, it's about changing policies and making sure that we start to change the policies to be more inclusionary, to not disproportionately affect whether it's kids in schools or folks who are going to our prison system disproportionately, and so forth. So we need to do more than have words, and we need to make sure we bring folks to the table so that we continue to include their perspectives in the policies.
Okay, next question comes from Peter Kelman. How can we make sure that lower income and working people can afford to transition to electric vehicles and energy efficient homes?
Well, there's no doubt we need to do more. We have a number of programs that help middle income folks get over the leap of the price of vehicles, whether it's a tax credit or various systems to support folks getting solar energy on their homes. There are a number of programs that also exist for low income folks, but often, for instance, for renters, it's much more difficult because they don't have the power to retrofit a home to make that they're renting, nor the duration of living there. They don't have the leverage to get car chargers put on those rental properties so that if they were to buy an electric vehicle, they could actually charge it, even if it was a used one. So I think we really have to look at how we're using particularly these massive sums of federal money to see ways and find ways to create better access. There's no doubt that folks that are living paycheck to paycheck don't have the resources to make those upfront costs. And I've never shied away from talking about progressive taxation as well. The reality is we continue to have concentration of wealth in fewer and fewer hands. And in prior times in this country, the tax system was much more proportionally fair, and we had systems that were proportionally better towards helping those working class folks who are critical elements of our society, who work 40, 50, 60 hours a week just to put food on their table. Well, we need to shift the system so that they can work a livable number of hours and so that they have access to these kinds of advancements, not last in line, but in line with the rest of us.
Great. And I want to apologize. I know we're going to have to skip over a couple questions because we're getting quite a few in. I think we'll have to wrap up this event in just a few minutes. So if you do have questions that aren't answered tonight, you can feel free to reach out to me. My email is just lisa@zuckerman4vt.com. Send me those questions and we'll be sure to get back to you with answers. But the next question comes from Mackenzie Bolus. And it is, with the influx of federal funding at an unprecedented level, how do you see Vermont using these opportunities to build sustainable systems going forward?
Well, I think we're somewhat going in the right direction, although some of the areas that the governor proposed could use more resources. with respect to some of the transportation issues, home heating and energy systems. And there's no doubt with this much money that we need to have a real eye on making sure the money is well spent. As Lieutenant Governor, I can speak from experience, you end up with a staff of one person. So it's not so much that we can run around and look at every project and be the eyes and ears that make those dollars be spent efficiently. On the other hand, I know that when I was Lieutenant Governor, when I called to different parts of state government or different businesses who were using state dollars and inquired about, the end result and how the dollars are being spent, it shifted some of the actions. It made folks know they were being watched. Sunshine can really alter people's actions, but this is a real issue, Mackenzie, and I appreciate the question, and it's not easy to do. But one of the things that I also think we sometimes lose sight of is, for instance, in education and in some other aspects of government, we now have so many aspects of bean counters and folks making sure dollars are spent exactly right, that we spend more money trying to reduce things like fraud in the welfare system, which is almost non-existent. The amount of money we spend trying to oversee that is more money than we used to lose through a few people that, quote, took advantage of the system. So we need to make sure we find a balance between counting every single dollar, every single time, and keeping track of all the accounting through 6 or 7 different people's hands, to then losing money that could be going directly into helping people with the issues and needs that they have. Too often, I think we want to be Big Brother, watching how people are spending the day-to-day resources we're helping them with, heating their homes or putting food on the table, when the reality is those are the basic needs people have. They're going to spend it on those basic needs. So it's a combination, Mackenzie, and I appreciate the question. So thank you. I also want to point out, Lisa gave her email address, but you can also email us anytime. If you don't write that down, go to our website and you can email info@Zuckerman, FORVT.com, or info at our website with any question you have, and we'll make sure we get back to you.
Yes, thank you, David. And I'm going to make this the last question because I know we're a bit over the time that we were hoping to end this event. But I think this is an important one. So this will be our last question for the evening. And this is from Ezra Wilson. How are you planning to make sure that funds are properly allocated to all parts of Vermont? I've been in the Chittenden area a lot lately and realized how much better town programs and infrastructure are than in the more rural parts of Vermont, like the Northeast Kingdom. We can walk around town without walking on the road, particularly when it's winter and the sidewalks are not well managed. This can be applied to addiction treatment programs that seem radically underfunded and undersupported in these areas.
That's a great question, and there's a few different factors at play here. One is that one of the things I want to do, and I've been asking this question lately and haven't gotten answers, is proportionally how much money is being spent in rural areas that are underserved relative to their population, the resources that go to the state. And in many instances, more money does go to rural areas per capita than the urban areas, but the urban areas have efficiencies of scale. We have efficiencies of close proximity. We have reasons that some of the services are basically less expensive per person to administer. And so we need to make sure enough resources go to rural areas. One of the things that Kate mentioned earlier in the program had to do with community schools. And this is an idea that I've talked about for a long time. I know the NEA is talking about it. When I was on the Education Committee in the Senate, I discussed the idea of blending and merging some of the human services activities and offices into our community schools in every single town. Because right now, in some places, many places, there is no access point for human services in town. There's 12 or 14 centers around the state, but that can be 30, 40, 50, even an hour away for some people if they have a car. So why not, if we have declining student populations and space in our schools, create a touch point in many communities where folks have access to human services, to at least have access to someone who can get the resources brought into the town or into that individual's family, or get them the phone number for the counselor that maybe, if we end up with good broadband over the next year or two, can at least do telemedicine and telecounseling. So there's opportunities to do this better, to increase access, but fundamentally, it's about resources. And certainly for these next couple of years, we'll have the resources because of the federal influx of money. Thank you to Senator Leahy, Senator Sanders, and Congressman Welsh. The reality is Vermont got 5 or 6 times as much money per person as many other states in the country. A lot of folks don't realize that. And we obviously have to thank the governor for having done a reasonably good job through the pandemic. But it was particularly helpful to have literally almost unlimited money to do what was done. For these next couple of years, we need to use that money to not only support people in this moment as we come out of the pandemic, but also to build that infrastructure, to make sure we have those human services, the child care, the access points, so that people have access to those services. So I hope that helps frame it. It might not, I don't know if it answered every aspect of your question, but I do want to thank you. And Lisa, you talked about wrapping up. Do you want me to give that last bit, or do you want to throw in the last bit here?
I'm happy to do it myself.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I do appreciate it. And please, Lisa, take it over.
Yeah, thank you so much to David, to all of our speakers, and to everybody who's on this call tonight. This is going to be a people-powered campaign. We need people like you to step up and help us by volunteering, sharing our things on social media, making sure that you talk to people about the campaign, helping write op-eds and letters to the editor in your local papers, donating what you can if you have the means to. This campaign is really going to be fueled by the people of Vermont because we're out here representing the people and what they want. So head to Zuckerman4VT.com. That's Zuckerman, FORVT.com. You can find more information about the campaign. You can reach out to me. My name is Lisa Gerlach. My email is just lisa@Zuckerman4VT.com. Or Sarah, who will be our volunteer, working with all of our volunteers. That's Sarah with an H, SARAH, @Zuckerman4VT.com. If you have any questions or are interested in helping out. And that's all we have for you tonight. Thank you again for coming, and everybody have a good night.